phys ed, health, all-around guru coach. Very strict, too. Very strict, but she was telling us in the hallway all of her different names and a lot of different occupations, and she's kind of an icon of Pendleton. And with this being Pendleton Inspiration, that's what she's going to talk to us about tonight, is Pendleton, some history of Pendleton, her history. But I'm going to let her continue with a little bit of who she is and what she's done and what all she knows. And she's going to entertain us with the Pendleton history.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very glad to be here tonight. And first of all, I would like to tell the people who are in this group that I think you've done a wonderful job in creating an art building and having people who are so interested in it. And I became a member, but I'm not into art as most of you are. I wrote this book of poetry, and poetry is verbal art, they say now. So I became a member, I think. I was really pleased. I liked the idea when I first did this that you were wanting people to work together. I think that's a wonderful idea. And I was pleased to have, where's Sherry, choose me to make from one of my poems a fabric poem that would hang on the wall. And it's still hanging there, Sherry. And it looks very pretty, so when people work together, it really means a great deal to the people. And some of the things that I will say will kind of deal with that, I guess, won't it? So where am I going to start? Here. This thing happened that kind of gave me, what did it do? It gave me something to start with. When this event happened just about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so I'm going to start, where I'm going to start. Yeah, here's where I want to start because it was an inspiration to me. Recently, I was working at the Pendleton Historical Museum, and a man walked in and I asked him to sign the register at the door, as is the custom. I am a newcomer here, he said. I signed up as a board member and I want to be a part of this town. Well, I said, you have spirit, and I'm sure you will be welcome here. Well, welcome here, I replied. I had the pleasure to serve on the historic Fall Creek Pendleton Settlement Committee, and during that time was a part of getting the town of Pendleton added to the record of historical landmarks. I was working, and I want to explain, I think everybody should know that Pendleton is not an ordinary town. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. And when it became that in, what was my date? 1992, there were only 2 towns that were on the National Register of Historic Places, and the other one was Madison in southern Indiana. And we still have this title here. And, well, sorry, I don't want to be too long here. I'm trying to work in things about Pendleton. Now, personally, I should know a lot about Pendleton. I was born in the 20s, and the 20s was during the Depression. And believe me, it was a depression. Some of you possibly, I don't know if anybody's been here that long or not. But it was the real depression, and people thought we had one just a few weeks ago, or 8 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago. And it was nothing compared to what we had in the 20s. And I learned a lot. I lived on a farm. I grew up on a farm, small farm, on the Madison-Hancock County line. And I had 2 brothers, 3 sisters, father, mother, chickens. We had geese one time, and we had, well, it was back in the day when you had cows and you were butcher things. You'd have your family come in and they'd help you out, you know, brothers, sisters, and my dad. And it was quite an interesting way to grow up, believe me. But the things that you had, and I just like to listen. I think people are interested in knowing what it was like back then. We didn't, we didn't have electricity in the houses at all then. Roosevelt was president, and he was trying to help the people in the country to get things so they could live better lives. And I was always very grateful to the president and his wife Eleanor, because they were always trying to help people. And we got electricity in the country. And later on we had bathroom facilities. It took a while to get all of this, you know. But I don't want to talk too much, but there are some things that kind of like to put together. A little bit about Pendleton history. The town was founded in 1820, and the reason the people came to this location was because of the falls in the park. Of course, there was no park then, but the people were coming from Ohio because they thought that they would find a better place to live here. And indeed, they had the falls so that they wanted to make a living. They were going to have farms and plant things, and at the falls, they could have their grain ground. And that was one of the reasons that they came to this area. Others came because of their religion. There were, as most of you, I don't know, how many of you are native? Okay. I'm thinking of the church, which is out on the road east of here, where the Friends had their church, and that church is still in operation. So Pendleton has that going for it. And it's a pretty good place to be, isn't it? But it isn't just an ordinary place because of being on the National Register of Historic Places. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. I was on the group that was working to get it on the National Register of Historic Places. And a little explanation. The reason that we did that, the people at Ball State University, that's one of the things that they do. They have classes in historic preservation, and they have professors, and they wanted a project, and they came down here, and we had several, 2 especially, 2 or 3 women who had wanted to do, well, they were kind of ahead of what I was then. There were others certainly that were wanting to do this. And so we got a group together, and it took us a lot of work to get on the National Register. And those people came down from the college, and they would come down here. They went through this whole town and checked every house in this town to see which ones were historic buildings. And maybe some of you live in those historic buildings. But I wonder if people know whether they're in a historic building or not. But I think you could find out if you wanted to, if you were in one. But, yeah. What? Oh, well, yeah, but I was wondering. Yeah, here, where's the start? Oh, so should I go ahead? Well, yes, of course, you probably know. But when we got on this thing, the town council, at that point, the people that were on the town council, and it's time ago, wanted to tear down a historic building right across from the post office. You know, that great big brick building right across from the post office. They wanted to tear it down and put in a parking lot, because they needed a parking lot in the town. And of course, we were told there are rules for this, having this honor. And the first thing we were told was, the worst thing you could do after you got on the National Register of Historic Places was to tear down an historic building or and build a parking lot. Well, now you know what happened. It's what's happening, or what happened, over on the school street, and at one of our school buildings, the one that I went to school in, was disposed of. And it's possible you could be taken off of the National Register of Historic Places by doing things like that. Now, I don't know how many places have lost that, but if we want to stay on the historic list, then we need to not tear down places. And I don't know that anything will happen, but I don't know that it won't, but I just think everybody should know that historic houses are torn down. But I want to, and I'm going to go too long. I want to give you a picture of what happened when we did get on this National Register of Historic Places. And people knew about it. It was put in, it was told to other people, friends, people told their friends about it. And people from other places said, oh, we've got a place down there. It sounds like it's interesting, let's go. And they did start coming. My friends from Indianapolis would come in big groups to come down and see what was going on. And what was happening in the town then was that the people who had places in the town, the merchants downtown, were fixing things up. And there were several new restaurants that were started. There were the craft places. We had some really nice craft places. We had a lovely place for to shop for the women to shop. And then there were restaurants that were good. Everybody went to what was it you went to? Do you remember? It was, what is it?
The bank?
The old trail.
Well, there was the bank
Trail.
down,
The old
but
trail?
no, the one I always think of is the one on the car there. It was an in-house and it was a cozy place. It was like a, whatever.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember
The
the name.
cabbage.
Cabbage.
Everybody was going to the cabbage road. And people were coming to town and buying things, you know, and looking around. And I've heard stories of people coming through the town, not more than one store actually, coming through the town, and they drove through it and they saw the houses and they looked around and they drove back through and they said, oh, this is a pretty nice town, isn't it? And drove back through, and some of them actually came back and looked around and bought houses and decided they were going to move here. I've heard more, at least one or two stories of their liking the town because of the way it was and because of the houses that were in it. And this gentleman that was, I was talking to, I mentioned this before, he had bought his house, but he didn't just want his house, he wanted to be a part of the group. And so I would call him a spirit. Now, we're all spirits, I think. We all have a spirit of life. Everybody has one, do you? Yes. The spirit of life. And sometimes you think about it and sometimes you won't. But I've hooked on to this phrase, the spirit of life. And I've seen it in so many places. And one of my grandsons sent me a book. And he said, he had read the book, and he said, Grandma, I read this book, and I don't know anybody else at all who would read it besides you. And so I got the book, and it was about spirit. It wasn't just exactly the same thing, but it was about a man who was trying to find his spirit. And I've read most of it, but I've hooked on to this spirit of life, and think it's something that all of us might be concerned with. And when you think, well, what day is this? Where am I now? What's important to me? What am I going to do tomorrow? All that. But it's everybody's choice as to what they're thinking about and determined to do. It's an individual thing like that. Where do I go now? I'm talking to Ralph about that. Okay. Well, that's a good point. Well, I don't have something else here. Oh, well, yes, that's what I wanted to do next. Thank you. I think we have a lot of people who are good spirits in Pendleton, and I've listed some of them, and I'm sure I don't have them all. But it's starting with local groups. I would say the Lions and the Kiwanis. Then there's the Garden Club and flowers in the park. Isn't it wonderful the way that the Garden Club keeps our park looking good? Then there are weddings and music programs in the park in the day and in the dark. And there are parents moving to another area. There are so many parent teachers because I have grandchildren in the schools, several of them, and I know of the activities. There are so many people parents who volunteer in the schools, just because they want to help the teachers. And the children are happy because they know the teachers get help and the children smile and they get to have birthday parties. And then they also have a day for grandparents, invite the grandparents in. It's a pleasure to go there, and the children will have things to tell you about and ask you questions about your life, maybe, and tell you what the teacher does, and it pleases the elders to be able to do that. So I think Pelham's just a wonderful town, and I think what the town was like when the people came from Ohio and first came here, and what it was like, and then think what it's like now. Now that's quite a number of years, but think how the town has developed. And then we might stop and think, are we going to leave this town in a good situation, develop it and make it even better for the next generation? And that is something we could consider, as if we have a lot of spirits, which I think we have. We're going to have a good town in the future. I don't know what to do next. Just to
Do you want to mention
Oh.
in closing or?
Oh, okay. It's good enough.
Pretty much put everything on there.
Oh, okay. But I did want to tell you, I think, but maybe I did already, this is not an ordinary poetry reading. This is my poetry book. And shall I go on to the other, the ending one right here? Here's the one that's a poem from the book this time. And it's a sad poem. And I didn't mention at first, you've all experienced good times and you've experienced bad times in your life, probably. I think that's normal. And this is a poem I wrote after one of the times when someone you loved was gone. And little things I'll keep forever. A Petoskey stone from the summer trip. A yellow mum from the last bouquet. A picture of family by the pond. A birthday card with